Hi, I'm Clay Carlino, and I'm surrounded by most of a car. I'm working on a project. It's a pretty big, long, involved project, and I'm shooting video, which at some point you will see the video if I ever stop working on the car long enough to actually edit all the video that I'm shooting for it. But my neighbor came over and we were talking, and he was looking at just how ridiculously in over my head I am on this, and making the comment, but you can do that because you've got all the tools and you know how to do this stuff, and you've been doing it for a long time. Most people can't do that. And I will agree that there are people that really just can't do this kind of stuff for a number of reasons. But that's not to say that you can't do it. And let me explain that, because this is sort of one of the philosophies that I live my life by. This is one of the reasons why I started creating these videos in the first place. And this is the lesson of why I do the stuff that I do and share it with you online. You see, I didn't start out with most of a car saying, yeah, I can fix that. No. If you go back, like, say, about 9 years, I was living in an apartment. I had my Saturn, and I remember one of the last repairs that I had done at a mechanic was changing the O2 sensor. And it cost me somewhere around $100. And, I was living on a shoestring budget. $100 was a lot. And you know what? $100 is a lot, especially for an O2 sensor. But, you're paying the mechanic. There's an hourly rate. It's usually somewhere around $50 an hour, and they're going to charge you for the whole hour because that's their business. They don't clock it with a stopwatch, and whatever time they take up, that's what you pay for. They allot a certain amount of time for the job, and that's what you pay for. And then if they have a really good mechanic that can do that job in half the time, that's how they make money. At least that's one of the ways that they make money. Which is good, because if they didn't make money, they wouldn't be open, and then there wouldn't be a place for people to get their cars fixed who don't do the stuff that I'm doing, and presumably you're interested in doing, or you wouldn't be watching this video. I started trying to fix these things myself, and it was a little scary, but I've always been interested in mechanical things. I've always been a tinkerer, and I always wanted to know how to fix cars. I just never had the opportunity, and that was a time when, sort of out of necessity, because I just couldn't afford to have a car and keep it long term if I didn't know how to fix it. Going to the mechanic was just too expensive. I just couldn't afford it. And I also couldn't afford a car payment, so I couldn't just keep buying new cars all the time. So for me, this was a matter of survival. But I didn't have a garage. I was working off the street, or there was a parking lot up the street that I was always nervous that I would get kicked out of, or that somebody would come and yell at me, or maybe the police would come by when I had lots of parts and tools and stuff. Fortunately, that never happened. People are actually pretty sympathetic when they see you working on a car. In fact, half the time they're interested. So that turned out to be okay. But then when I bought my first house, which was a foreclosure, I made sure it had a garage. This place, we nickname it the Mansion, and it cost $7,000, and the garage, like when it would rain, water would pour in at like as if somebody turned on a faucet in various areas coming down from the roof. But it didn't drip over top of the car, and it had a door on the front. It wasn't heated. I had to run electric, but it was a place off the street where if I had to do a more involved repair, I could pull the car in and have it disassembled for an extended period without worrying that I would get towed or get an abandoned vehicle sticker or something like that. So that was a step up. That enabled me to do things that I couldn't do when I was on the street. And then as I would do one job, I learned how to do my brakes, and I learned how to do rotors, and every now and then I kept having to buy more tools. But when you compare the cost of the repair to what you'd pay at a mechanic shop versus what you're paying buying the parts yourself and then going to Harbor Freight and buying the tool, then you're still saving massive amounts of money. And so the tools are sort of free, and you get to keep them at the end. Even if you end up screwing something up and have to buy a part over again, or you break a tool and buy it again, or you break something else and have to fix that, when you compare it against the cost of going to a mechanic and having it fixed, it's just about always cheaper. So even when you lose, you win. The worst repair that I did was a ball joint for the truck. It was the first time I had ever done a ball joint. And it took me 3 weekends to break that thing loose. And I had to buy the ball joint kit at Harbor Freight. And the time that I put into that was just obscene. And it would have been so much easier just to take it to the mechanic. And if you calculate the amount of time that I spent on it, and put an hourly rate on that, then it would have been way cheaper. But I've done a lot of ball joints since then. And learning how to do that, it was worth it. It was painful, but it was worth it. So it's true. If you're interested in working on cars or interested in doing anything yourself, whether it's home maintenance, plumbing, construction, whatever, landscaping, yard work, anything that there are professionals to do it, but you'd like to know how to do it yourself. I lost the sentence that I was saying. If you're interested in doing these things, you don't start out being able to do something like this. You start out with the small things. But the more you learn, the more confident you get to do the next thing. And you'll acquire tools, and you start prioritizing having a place to do these things. So the jobs that were unattainable when you started just keep getting more and more attainable as you progress and as you learn more. So that's why when I say be brave, be brave. This is an exciting time to live in. It's an exciting world to live in. There's so many things that we have access to. Things like videos that people like me and many others put online that show you how to do stuff. I didn't have that growing up. I had a Chilton manual. And that was it. I didn't even have friends that worked on cars. It was very, very difficult to know what to do when I was growing up. It's so much easier now. But things are more complicated too. So, there's a lot that you can do. And no, I'm not saying that you start out with half a car that has a smashed up front end and needs massive reconstruction before it's roadworthy. You don't start there. Start by changing your own oil. Start by learning to change your brakes. Do your own O2 sensor. Work up from there. You'll learn so much, and there is no replacement for the pride that you get from looking at your vehicle and being able to say, yeah, it's got 180,000 miles on it, but I figure it'll keep going for another several years. That's great. Also, it helps to get a second vehicle because, and that's something else that I prioritized early on when I really started doing this in earnest. I needed a second vehicle so that when one vehicle goes down, I can take the time to get it fixed. When you've only got one means of transportation and you depend on it every day, then you can't take the time to make a decision like, can I fix it myself? It's got to go to the mechanic and it has to be fixed right now. So it's worth it to have a second vehicle or have access to a second vehicle, or at least have a plan. If you're living in an area that has a lot of public transportation and you know how to use it, then awesome. Also, things like Lyft, Uber, ride-sharing things, that works well. Or become friends with your neighbors, and if you have to bum a ride, and especially if you're good at fixing things, your neighbors will love you. So that's it. I just wanted to kind of address this really quickly, and then I'm going to get back to work because at some point I have to stop work. I have to finish some of this stuff so I can get back to editing so that you can get videos with better content. This is Clay Carlino telling you definitely to be brave and also have fun. It's fun to know how to do this stuff. It's not fun when you're in a crunch, admittedly, but when it's a pet project like this, it's fun. So, be brave, have fun.